Today, we are not only in Two Rivers, we are in Worthington, Ohio, and we're so excited to have Allison here, Allison Chapman from Igloo Letterpress. We're going to get a tour. We're going to talk shop. And I had a note that it's her birthday. I couldn't find my hat and my candles, so I'm hoping this is a celebration. We are going to talk. She started very early on her path in letterpress printing. She enjoyed helping her granddad in his hobby print shop. His equipment forms the core of Igloo's printing and bookbinding studio in Ohio. Igloo is a magnet for creatives, creators, and crafters. They have collected roomful of precious equipment built to bring ideas to life and put hands to work. And that's their goal for each person who walks through those doors. They spark creativity with machines, type, and illustrations. They're steeped in history, and they really welcome everyone to come and be inspired in their printing and bookbinding studio, classroom, and retail shop. Allison did a lovely Ways Boost presentation in 2019, and we're really happy to be able to chat with her today and see her shop. So we're so glad to do these ham hangs. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And Allison, I'm going to hand it over. Thank you again for giving us this tour.
Well, I had a great idea that we would start outside, and I'll be honest, I didn't think it was going to be so loud. So let's go in. We'll start right inside.
That sounds good. It's so cute from the outside.
We had crying babies and barking dogs and everything in between while you were giving your very nice introduction, Stephanie. So thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great. You had real life get in the way. Is that what happened?
But that's, I love that we have been able to be a part of this little downtown community. Worthington is a first ring suburb of Columbus, and we've got an ice cream shop and a wine store and a candle store and a French bakery and an American bakery. And it's just been a really nice little downtown area to be a part of. We're up in the store right now, and this is about a third of our space. I've got a press up front in the window so that when people are walking by, they get a little clue about what happens inside. And we've had all kinds of questions from people who come in and ask us, what kind of farm equipment that is, or a few people will come in and share a story about, someone in their family who was a printer. But it makes me really happy to be able to start that conversation right up front with people so they get a sense of not only the things that are in our store, give them a clue about what letterpress printing is and what's important to us as a business, but also a little bit about the process. So maybe in the background, you can hear Regan is printing some cards today, and we'll go back through the studio here in a second, but I thought it would be nice just to look around the store a little bit. When I started Igloo, I was just really out of college and had an idea that I would kind of continue what my granddad had done with his printing press. I inherited it in 96. I think that's right. I'm looking at my husband because he's 95, 96. He's helping with the camera today. Thank you, John. And we bought our house in Minneapolis and, housed the press there. That's why Igloo was called Igloo, because we were not native Minnesotans and our families thought we were crazy to stay and live somewhere so cold. But when we moved to Ohio, I really was yearning for some sense of community and wanted to meet people. And in some ways, starting this business in a more public way was kind of my field of dreams moment. Like if I built it, people would find me and people would come. And I think the great end of the story is that that worked and that people have really felt that Igloo is their place as well as the place that obviously is very important to our family as our business. One of the things that we're best known for in our community are our farmers market posters. So, yeah. Right in our downtown in the normal times, BC before COVID, right outside our door is an amazing farmers market that's well known in our region as a destination. And we've done a series of 12 farmers market posters, starting with fruits and vegetables. And then we did some floral ones up here in the center as well. And those have been a great way for us not only to collaborate with local designers, but also, to kind of make our way into people's homes and to really celebrate what we love about our local community. The fruits and veggies were designed by Will Rocco, who's a designer here in town. And then the floral ones up here were designed by Rachel Dangerfield, who's been one of the main designers that I've worked with in our time here in Columbus. You'll start to see some of the things I love about printing as you look at our work. I love experimenting with halftones and with overprinting. So on the Dahlias poster, you can see that's a 3-color print. We did the light blue in the background, then the navy, and then the red on top. So this big dark flower down in the bottom is 100% of the red, overprinted on 10% of the navy, and that's what gives that richer color to that flower. You can see some of the detail work in the flower above it. The red variation in the petals shows a percentage of the red. I think that was like 50% of the red in that area. But a little more subtle in the gladiolas, but you can see it, the overprinting with the gradients there as well.
And are all those backgrounds hand carved or vintage or?
Oh, that's a great question. No, 99% of the work that we do is printed from photopolymer. You're going to see a lot of stuff printed from wood type, but often, like when I started printing these fruit and veggie farmers market posters, I printed the type and then scanned it so that the designer could lay it out in the file so that we could do all of one color in one pass and save the plate, save the lockups basically.
That's smart. Nice. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, you bet. A couple of years ago, we were, I'll just say shocked and excited to get an email from a foundation that was helping the Wright family. The Wright brothers, of course, are Ohio boys, and started out in Dayton, Ohio, which is about an hour and a half from here. One of the first business ventures that they took out was to start their own print shop. And there's a great museum setup print shop down in Dayton. If you find your way there, you can see an approximation of what their print shop looked like. Of course, they also invented their own printing press because they could invent anything. They went on to design their own bicycles before they did the airplanes. So we have a line of licensed artwork that we print and sell as part of our wholesale line, as well as here in the store. Being sentimental local favorites, the Begin Life in Ohio is the most popular item in the line, but we also have pins and patches and journals and postcards, and hopefully we'll keep bringing out new things. I'd love to do some products based on the bicycle designs, and it was really fun to be able to go through the archives of what the Wright brothers actually printed, and to be able to see the wood engravings that they did, and to look at the fonts that they had in their type collection. I don't know that the things that they printed didn't exactly inspire me to create new products, because it's a very Victorian look, and I don't know that like a modern customer who's buying our products is going to be excited about it. So I'm still kind of teasing out what I'm going to do based on that. But that's been a great partnership for us.
Before you move too far, we have one more polymer question. So I figure I'll ask before you go too far. Do you make your own plates or do you order? And if so, where?
No, we used to have a plate maker, but we found ourselves in the uncomfortable situation of needing that 1970s film negative technology. And I didn't have a reliable local vendor that I could use to make my negatives. So I sold my plate maker, and that was just I still am questioning whether or not that was the right choice, to be honest, but it's one less thing to do. And I'm happy to be able to support my friends and their businesses and be able to magically receive boxes of plates. So we do a couple orders of plates each week.
Are you going to Boxcar or somewhere else?
Yes. No, we work with Boxcar.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, and seeing your
Yeah.
prints is great. They're beautiful.
Thank you. In addition to the print, wall here we have a wall of cards. This is my favorite part of the store because I love hearing people laugh or explain when they find the perfect card. And I also love that I've been able to support so many other printers and their businesses as mine has expanded. So we did our first National Stationery Show in 2010, I believe. And, you know, being there was kind of like going to a ways goose because I got to meet so many other printers who had similar businesses to mine. And it was really helpful for me to recognize that I didn't have to create like 10 separate card lines that were perfect for every person in the world. Like I could make cards that I was excited about, and then I could buy cards from, you know, other people that would kind of round out our store. So the card wall seems to be growing and growing. This year, unfortunately, we really had to expand our sympathy section. So we have a whole spinner now of just sympathy and kind of encouragement cards and lots of thank you cards as well. So not everything that we sell is letterpress printed, but the majority of it is. Since we moved into this location 6 years ago, the part of the business that's grown the most was a bit of a surprise to me, and that's bookbinding. So we've really expanded the number of journals that we carry and that we make in-house. So we have a small notebook selection over here, field notes, and of course we had to get the letterpress field notes so that we could celebrate that. And then little spiral bound notebooks that we make in-house, as well as refillable books that I started making when my kids were little and would only draw just in the center of a piece of paper. So we've really expanded the variety of types of books that we sell. And soft cover, larger books, and hardcover books are over. When we get, you know, in previous times, let's go over to the bookmark for a second. When we had a lot of people in the store with us, one of my favorite things to do was encourage people to drop in for small projects. So we used to do a lot of hands-on project on press. Then I also set up a book bar. So as my son said, this is like the Chipotle of bookbinding. So you get to choose your size. You get to choose what kind of a cover you want. We have some letterpress covers, and then we have just the rainbow of plain solid colors. We have plain pages, lined pages, grid pages, comic book squares, and then you get to choose the color of the thread that you'd like to sew it with. And it's just a nice, simple 10-minute project to make a pamphlet stitch book. I like that kids who are growing up are going to think that's normal. Like, I'm enough of a contrarian and that I love that this handmade business has kind of made it to our main street, and that kids can come in and tell me their favorite font and the books that they're working on. It makes me happy. One of my other favorite things about Igloo is all the great people I've gotten to work with over the years, and I'm lucky today that Regan is here, so I wanted to give her a chance to introduce herself as well. Take a break from the press.
Cool. Hi, I'm Regan. I just started working at Igloo not that long ago.
Less than a month.
Less than a month ago.
Yeah.
But I've been printing since about 2017. I started at the University of Michigan's Book Art Studio, which opened fall 2017. So I was their first studio assistant. That was located in the art library at the University of Michigan. And I got to work with Jim Horton, the wood engraver and letterpress printer. And then I worked for 1 year in Detroit very closely with Amos Kennedy. And then after that, I moved back to Columbus, worked at the Columbus Printed Arts Center, and now I'm here. So I've worked in university settings, in Amos's shop, and then community print shop, and now here at Igloo, which is kind of like a mix between a community shop and a production house. So, yeah.
And one of the things I think that's been interesting, I love, this is actually, Regan's the first person who's ever worked here who spent a lot of time in another person's shop. So for me, it's been really fun to, because I've never worked in a commercial letterpress shop, like our commercial print shop. So all of the processes that we have here are things that make sense in my brain, but it's been really good to try to translate that and to hear like what's different, and, you know, kind of what's the same. So apparently I don't use very much ink.
Well, coming from Amos's shop, I would say I'm a little biased.
But that's also a great difference between working with wood type than working with photopolymer plates, which was, I think everything you've printed so far has been from a plate.
Yes, this is my first time printing from polymer plates. I've used type before this. And I'm using
Awesome.
Do you want to talk presses over here?
So I mentioned before that we've been in this space for 6 years. And the first Igloo official location was our house in Minneapolis. And this is my granddad's press. This is the press that I learned on. I had a little Kelsey press that he would like give me to like keep me busy while he was working. But he was a woodworker, an iron worker. He did a lot of decorative iron work. He loved blacksmithing. And I think really he just loved machines and how they work. And so if he saw something interesting, he would teach himself how to use it. So at the time he was living in Independence, Missouri, and he went to a neighbor's farm and saw this in a barn and thought it looked interesting. So he figured out how to put it together and taught himself how to print. He was a member of the APA, and really, I think his favorite thing to do was make like goofy placemats for football parties that he and my grandma would throw. I live in Columbus, Ohio now, but I grew up in Columbia, Missouri, and I thought that was a big football town. But he loved to make goofy letterhead for himself and his friends, and then did a lot of stuff related to antique gas engines and like steam engines. He also collected those, and we would go out to do demonstrations at historical fairs. And I just grew up always talking about the process and talking about how the machines work. So that seems like a very natural way for me to work here at Igloo as well. This is a Johnson Peerless press, and it's a smaller press. I like having the variety of presses that we have here because it allows me to choose the press depending on the project that we're working on. So to be honest, I need to get new rollers for this press, and it's not, well, it's a sentimental favorite because it was my grandfather's. It's not like the press that I do my best printing on. Let's say that. I have to show you, I printed poorly printed some halftones of my grandparents that they had used for their Christmas cards. And so I'll.
So that's the printer.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's lovely. I'm so glad you shared these.
So I have his, all the things that he printed and his APA bundles, and I've loosely organized them in 3-ring binders so that I can go through. And I love the type specimens that people printed and being able to go through and see what people had in their shops. Kind of like I was talking about with the Wright brothers. I'm fascinated with the idea of the printer as designer, and that the type that you have in your shop could, in some ways help your work to be more recognizable. That's certainly not the case with the majority of the files. People send me PDFs and we make plates and we can print any typeface that a customer would like. But when I'm going back and I'm doing my reading about, historical print shops, I really like to be able to recognize the work by the typefaces that people are printing with.
You have the APA community very excited in the chat. They want to know his name and his number, if you know it.
Oh, yeah. His name was Mark Gibson. His press name was Poverty Ridge. I don't remember his number off the top of my head, but he was treasurer when Stephen Sachs was president. So he passed away. My granddad passed away in, I think, 85. And my grandma saved everything for me, or didn't move it because it was heavy, depending on your point of view. And then, like I said, I got it when I graduated college.
That's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't, and I'll say the first 10 years that I had the press, I didn't have the confidence to join APA. And then once I started Igloo, I was like, I didn't have the confidence that I'd be able to print my bundle pieces, but I'm gonna apply because it's kind of stupid that I never did. So I'll be following up on that.
Well, and I'll let everyone know in case you don't know APA, I shared their link.
Oh, thank you.
It's a group of printers. There's only 150 members at a time, and everyone has to print, or it's 100 members. My brain just freaked out. Anyway, and everyone prints 4 pieces a year. So monthly, you get a bundle of lovely prints from other printers. Okay, thank you, Allison.
Awesome. Yep. So we're kind of out of the store now. We're in the print area. I moved almost all the presses up front because we would get funny questions from customers like, where's the warehouse where you do your printing? And it's like, I don't know, you'd have to be a millionaire to have a separate print shop and then just, a store like this. This would be like a museum setup. But I tried to bring everything up here so that we can talk with customers as they're shopping and they can get a sense of seeing things as they're being made. Right off the shop, we have the messy closet full of backstock. So I keep all of our card stock in here to fill holes. Oh, that's far enough. You don't have to go all the way in. That's the messy part back there.
Okay, all right.
And then as we go further back, we have a couple banks of type. So over the years, I've tried different things to organize wood type and finally have collected in that open cases. That this whole bank of this cabinet is wood type. And then we have the cuts. A lot of these I inherited from my grandfather. And then of course, people kind of come out of the woodwork and share things with you. So we've tried to organize them by subject. There's Ohio blocks and maps. A lot of lino cuts that we've done over the years, some advertising. We've got a Christmas case. And then our favorites, of course, we have type from Scott Moore, who is here in town. We're very lucky to be able to work with him. We've got a little shipping and receiving and bicycle storage over here. More type. I love this McGrew book, and I think the first 6 months that I had this book, I just kept it on my bedside table because I love to go through and read the descriptions that he wrote for all of the faces that are included here. We were lucky enough for a couple of years to have Lonnie working here at Igloo to organize the type. And I don't see my notebook right here. I think I was using it in a customer meeting the other day. But this is, I'm going to blow your minds right now. Lonnie went through case by case, counted how many of each letter there are, and made a 3-ring binder that's cross-referenced so that if you want to come in and work on a project at Igloo and you're interested in using the 18-point Garamond italic, you'll know if there's enough E's to finish your job. I just can't believe it. It's amazing. And we've got a conference room over here to meet with customers and talk about things that they want to make.
Someone asked, what's Lonnie's contact number?
Right?
Yeah.
And then this is kind of bookbinding production. We'll come back here in a minute. We've got some office space. And then all the way back here, all kinds of crazy projects happening. Guillotine and board shear, paper storage, things waiting to be cut, things waiting to be finished. And then hiding in this corner behind all the supplies to make our new window display, I have a Kluge. And this is the press that I've spent the least time with. And I actually haven't run a project on it since the pandemic started. We got this from a local company that had an in-house print shop where they printed everything for their pipe organ business. And unfortunately, they went out of business. And so I bought everything and used a local crane operator to rigger to get it out of the third story of a building. And then that was a terrifying day, but it made it safe and sound. I thought I would show some samples, and I'm happy to answer questions too, because I know that was kind of a whirlwind tour. But I get excited talking about the presses and talking about my granddad, but I'd be remiss in saying that, I learned a love of printing from my grandfather, but I was like 15 when he passed away. So I actually learned how to print in college. I was a history major, but I went to a liberal arts school and I decided to take a printmaking class. And luckily enough, the instructor, Ruth Ann Godoli at McAllister College, was very encouraging. And she told me that I could have access to the letterpress equipment as long as I was enrolled in classes in the print shop. And so I took independent classes with her the rest of my time at McAllister. And then I had heard about this place called the Minnesota Center for Book Arts, but I would have had to do like a half-hour bus ride. And as a kind of myopic college student, I never took the time to go over there. But I did start in the year I graduated to volunteer there, and ultimately ended up a staff member at the Center for Book Arts for 11 years. And that's really, I think, what has shaped my lifelong adult interest in letterpress, seeing the craftsmanship and the quality of the work that was done there. While it was hard for my perfectionist tendencies to kind of come to terms with what I was going to do, after seeing everybody's work, it really did inspire me to become a better craftsperson and to really spend that time to become a better printer. And now, so many years later, every project that I think of turns into a book. And we are in the process of always working on custom orders for book projects. So we do a lot of books where sometimes the only printing will be on the front cover. So I printed the cloth on the Vandercook, and then the pages were printed digitally. This was a memoir of someone's grandfather. No printing on this one, just digital printing and binding the book. So often we're just doing like 10 copies of a book. Sometimes we'll just make one if somebody is retiring. Yeah. Don't open it though. So that's just black on leather. It's a bonded leather that is like recycled leather. So you can buy it on a bolt. You don't have to worry about scars or anything like that. So when I have projects for our corporate customers, it's nice to be able to do that. But we're doing multi-section books, we're doing longer books. They're all sewn like this, kind of a modified French style of sewing with no tapes. And then the spine gets glued and cased into the cover. Done a lot of corporate projects. Everybody sitting at the table has the nice book, but also a lot of family projects. This was a birthday gift for somebody, and everyone in the family wrote about their favorite vacation at their lake home in Canada. And then I created this for the birthday boy.
Well, look at those end papers. I
Isn't
forgot
that
about
pretty?
that. Yeah. Kind of wood grain.
That's a Gamond paper.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
look at those tight corners. Too.
also have done a fair number of like academic binding. This was someone's master's thesis. Has a hidden Japanese sewing pattern inside. I think still my favorite part about printing and bookbinding is figuring out how to make something. I love production work. I love monotonous tasks, and I really like to spend the time to dial in the process to get the best thing, the best end product. So one of the things that I've been really happy to see take off over the last couple years are we added hardcover books to our wholesale line. So we have a whole rainbow of colors that they're available in. And then we sell these in our store for $28. But you know, this winter, it was wild. We were making like 100 books a week. And to be able to be at a point where we can turn out like a really well-made product like that is very satisfying to me. We're in the process of adding more book-related things to our product line. And we're doing a lot of little letterpress printed books that people can make themselves. So there'll be a kit with all the raw materials, and then we'll have a video as well that people can watch, and a little writing lesson that goes along with it. And I'm trying to do things for different ages. So these are some digital mock-ups of our newest kit that we just finished printing it. So that's the digital one. And now you should show them the pretty letterpress one. It's so much better. I just love the way the ink sits on the paper. Looks great. So this is a little tunnel book that comes with a recipe for making cookies and a little gift tag so that after you make the cookies, you can give them away as well. Of course, keep some to enjoy yourself. But I love to figure out I love making cards, I love making books, but I like making three-dimensional things too and figuring out the best way to do that. That's really engaging puzzle in my mind. I got really excited talking about books there for a second.
That was great.
Oh, nice.
We do have a couple questions. Do you mind if I ask them at this
No,
point?
that's great.
Okay. Though I love that cookie tunnel book. That's the best thing in the world. So I'm glad you shared that. Let's see. Oh, someone was curious as to what was your role at the Minnesota Center for Book Art?
Sure. I started at our old space on 3rd Street, 3rd Avenue, whatever it was. And I was a volunteer with the youth programs. But, you know, at a small nonprofit, you jump in and do everything. So the week that I started, they were assembling the Wrapup winter book. And so I was terrified to be tasked with the job of tipping in the prints for the deluxe edition of the winter book. But really, you know, I started as a volunteer and then became the education director and helped to set up the studio's current location on Washington Avenue. And I love that place.
You're
That's
also
great.
a printer of one of the
Oh
winter
yeah, I also printed one of the winter books too. Thanks, John. And you know, I hope to be able to do some work similar to the winter book. And people may not be aware of that project because it's not happening right now. But it's a publication where they would do a soft cover, a hard cover, and then a deluxe edition. And I really would love to work collaboratively with some local artists and designers to do some books like that here. So I'm hoping we'll be able to do more of that in the upcoming years.
Nice. And you can see how that leads to all the other things you now do at Igloo.
Yeah, for sure.
So Rebecca wants to know more about the Vandercooks you have there. You talked about a lot of your presses, but I don't know if you
Oh,
mentioned
yeah.
those.
The first Vandercook that I got was the number 4 in 2001. And then, that's the other thing, if you haven't been to the Center for Book Arts in Minneapolis, there's like an amazing print shop there with so many different models of presses. And so I'd been printing on my granddad's press, but when I saw the Vandercook and the larger, press bed and the grippers, I pretty much, knew by 99 or 2000 that someday I wanted to get a Vandercook. And so I was excited to get the number 4. When we did in our last location, which was here in the same little downtown area, we had a 232 power carriage, which was a very large Vandercook that I used to print gift wrap and posters. And I loved that press, but to be honest, I couldn't afford to print that big, and my customers couldn't either. It was kind of
Just expensive.
it was just expensive. Yeah. So I sold that press to Hatch, and we did a Kickstarter before we moved into this space, and we were able to buy a Universal. So right now we have the Vandercook number 4, a Universal, and then I have, a number 1, just a little sign press to take offsite to festivals and things like that. Got a pilot press and some smaller tabletop flatten presses as well. And then the Kluge.
That's a lovely list.
It is. I mean, it's a
Over
the
20
print,
years.
it's a print shop of my dreams, really.
Yes.
Like it's I think there's in some ways I feel like I've kind of lived my retirement now. Like this is like me, like it's hard to pass equipment by and not to buy everything that you see. Once we moved into this location, I had to make a conscious effort, like that I was done buying things for Igloo. And then it didn't work because I bought the Kluge, I guess. But you have to leave the community aspect of Igloo is very important to me. And I didn't want to fill the space with equipment and not have room for people. The classes that we have run here and like I said, the open houses and being able to have families come in to work on projects together, that's been a really important part of the business for me.
That's good to hear. And curation is hard for printers. I think we see it, we think we'll never see it again. And we just
Right?
want it. It has to come to us.
Yeah. So I'm happy now to be able to play a matchmaker.
Mhm.
And if people contact me, then I try to, either contact people who've taken classes here or put it out on our social media, but help to, because I don't want anything to get junked. So try to help people find a home for their equipment.
I think that's lovely. That's the way to be as a letterpress community. So, and then there was a question about cleaning your presses, which I love because we know it's different at a lot of shops.
Yes.
Do you
Mhm.
mind telling us how you clean your presses?
No, I am happy to. We use rubber-based inks primarily. Of course, the exception to that is the inks that are only available oil-based, like a neon or metallic. And so we have done many things over the years, including, baby oil and canola oil. And like when I was pregnant with our kids, and Igloo was in our house, I would, do an initial wash with a non-toxic cleaner, and then John would come down and do a final wash for me. But right now, we primarily use California Wash, and we have a rag service with a local company that services the restaurants in the neighborhood. So they bring us industrial, commercial rags that we can use, and then they pick them up once a month. And that has been a great part of being in this little business district, is to be able to piggyback on some of the other businesses and the services that they have.
That's great. The only last question I've seen is people were just curious about your bookbinding equipment. If
Yes.
that's shareable or kind of showing what you have there.
I am happy to. The most important, I was going to be sarcastic and be like, here, like a needle and thread in my hands, but that's not true. Of course, I have lots of equipment. Can I ask you, John, would you grab that jig over there? So I was lucky to be able to find a Jacques board shear And it's a cast iron shear that's over by the guillotine. We can go take a look at it in a minute. But I also, somebody in the chat may know who makes these. I'll have to look it up and share it if I don't remember. But this is one of my favorite tools.
Tim Moore.
Yes, it is. I know it was Tim. Thank you. So Tim makes his ingenious punching jigs for bookbinding. And there are needles that stand up and you have different dots here that you can move depending on the type of sewing that you're doing. So if somebody orders 1,000 pamphlet stitch books, we'll go through, we fold, we print the covers, we print the interiors, we fold everything by hand and do the collation. And then you can stick the whole thing upside down on these pins and then bring the handle down. Here, I don't want to punch my card. That's like $5 right there. I can't punch my birthday card. And then when you bring this down, it presses the paper onto those needles and pierces your sewing stations. So I will say, if I'm only doing like 20 books, I may not take the time to set this up, but when I'm doing longer editions for bookbinding or books with lots of sewing sections, then I love being able to use this. And let's go take a look at the board.
Is there anything else on the shelf you want to show?
Well, this is like my bookbinding staging area. So I've got all the stuff for spiral binding here. So we'll normally the way I think about something is that it's more cost effective to go, if I'm designing a book cover, I'm going to print like 300 of them and then I just make the books as I need them for my store or to fill orders. So we've got all the ribbon bookmarks here. So you can go through and cut whatever we need, and class materials for cradles for punching holes there. But a lot of this is different projects that are in progress. I have a customer, a local realtor who this was a second, but I'll show it anyway. There's a crease in there, so we won't use this for the actual customer, but it's a case that will have a tray inside. So if they have an expensive house that has a lot of printed materials, then we make these boxes with a magnet closure. So this is a white cloth that we printed on the Universal. But yeah, lots of different projects. Never out of ideas, and things to do. Sorry, it's kind of dark over here, but this is the board shear. There's a large table knife and a foot clamp so that when you are cutting, you can hold. This is book board, but it works great for paper too. But you can have your foot hold the material and then cut through the board that way. I was really happy that it still had the spring piece here. So when you're cutting spines, you can bring it all the way up and maybe the spine's only 1/4 inch thick, but then you can go through and chop a bunch of spines accurately. And it also has on the bed here, this, what would you call it? This fence, thank you, that you can lock in place. So that has been an amazing tool. And there's some pretty rose mauling kind of decorative painting as well down here, which I'd love to clean up a little bit.
Yeah, I loved the green on your grandfather's press. That
Yes.
paint color was great.
And then we don't have a big guillotine with lasers. I really, if there's an opportunity to slow down the process, I'm more likely to slow things down and be able to do it by hand rather than buy bigger equipment.
And actually Casey was wondering how often you have to get the board shears blade sharpened.
That's a great question. I haven't been able to find anybody who will sharpen it for me. So I never have. It's a little rough, I'll be honest. But
It's Dremel time.
we've adjusted the angle and the closeness to the table over the years, and that has been great in cleaning up the edge. And so I'm satisfied. I mean, I was being kind of flippant before, but I'm happy with the way that it cuts. But yeah, we have 2 blades for the guillotine, and I send those out for sharpening about every 6 weeks, depending on how busy we are or
Wow.
what we're cutting.
Along these lines, people are curious if you mind sharing how you set up the cloth for printing on the Universal.
Oh, yes. I will tell you the best idea that maybe I've had in the last 5 years. So let's go back up to the press. It'll be easier. Just go to the end of the Universal, maybe.
Sure. Oh, sorry. This end.
I just grabbed a scrap of cloth, but let's just print this birthday card that's on here on this scrap. So I have decided that for most of the bookbinding projects that we do, we have either a 3/4 or a 1-inch turn-in, which means if this is the book board, we're going to leave 3/4 here and here, so that can get turned over the edges of the board for binding. And when I'm printing, I want to make sure that I know where the boards are going to be so that everything's straight. So I do a rough cut of the cloth, and then I do a final trim in the guillotine to make sure that I've got square corners. And then I print on my Mylar, and that way it will offset onto the back of the cloth. And I'll be able to have something on the back of the cloth to use for registration if I'm not able to, because most of them can't see through the cloth for binding purposes. So that gives me some assurance that the cover is going to be straight after I turn the corners and glue everything down.
That's stunning. And do you have Mylar on your?
Yes, I do.
Nice.
So for the draw sheet on both, I buy rolls of Mylar from Blick Art Supplies and use that for my draw sheet. I do
That's
a
great.
score here at the gripper, and then I put masking tape here behind this assembly so that it has a little bit more friction, because I found over the years that the Mylar can slip. So putting a little masking tape back there helps to stay in place.
We won't turn you into Paul Moxon. He throws out all tape when he finds it on presses.
That's funny.
That was great. That has covered most of the questions so far. But
Great.
what I can also do is, if there's anything else we have 8 more minutes, if 7, if there's anything else you wanted to cover, or if anybody has any questions, they can raise their hand and they can ask you. It doesn't have to go through the chat.
Sure. I'm happy to answer more questions. I was kind of nervous, so I talked quickly and I got to hit all my points. So, but I'm happy to talk about whatever. Yeah.
You're also getting lots of birthday wishes. Is it true? Is it your birthday?
My birthday is Sunday. So
Ooh.
I find as I get older that I'm happy to celebrate my birthday and to tell everyone about it so that I get lots of birthday encouragement.
Well, you're getting lots of love, so.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Thanks.
I do want to say one of the things I absolutely love is that oh, Carol has a question. Let me let Carol ask your question instead of me.
Okay.
Carol, do you want to unmute?
Hello. When you acquire old wood block, what process do you go through to clean it up and make sure that you're conserving it for use for the next 100 years?
That's a great question. Often when I have received type, it has just been in a box, and there's a lot of mouse droppings, and it's a mess. I try to not use a lot of solvent directly on my wood type. So usually just a dry rag to start with to clean things up. If there are damaged letters, I take that as like just evidence of the life of the type, and that's something that I don't repair. I'm not going to fill things in and try and fix them. But I don't do anything special. I make sure to clean them well and use them regularly. One time I bought some equipment from a commercial printer, and he had a printing museum set up, for when customers enter their business. And he had taken type cases and covered them with plexiglass and had I think he had painted the type actually and let the paint dry on the type. So in instances like that, I've had to go through and do a little bit more invasive cleaning. But he was shocked that anybody would want to use it again. But I think that I like the preservation through production line from Patch. I think being able to keep it in good use is the best thing that I can do for it.
Excellent. Well, happy birthday.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's great. We clean ours with mineral spirits. We've been talking about trying the Amelia Fontenelle RIT cleaning
Yes.
with Gojo that doesn't have pumice.
Yeah, I thought that was fascinating. Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion.
Mhm. And for our time, I think I've got one last question from Susan, and she's saying, what is your process of working with graphic designers?
We have had designers on staff. I do not think of myself as a graphic designer. I think of myself as a printer and a craftsperson. Having said that, I like to design things, but I like designing things with type and the physical objects. I get a little overwhelmed on my computer with the options. So we have had many interns over the years who've come through from the advertising and graphic design programs here in town. So when I have a student who is here, I think it's important for them to be able to design something and then be able to print it and cut it and package it and have that whole experience as part of their internship. The cookie bears that I showed you a little while ago, our current intern, Colin Williams, had designed that. And it was a great experience for him to go through and mix the ink and be able to run a 2-color double-sided project and have it turn out so well. I think it's very informative from a production standpoint on how things are made, but I also think it's great to have that sense of pride in the making of how things are come together. I also will just straight out hire graphic designers. We did a line based on architecture in Columbus neighborhoods, and I worked with a real talented designer, Meredith Dixon, here in town. I mentioned Rachel earlier. Rachel Dangerfield started as an intern when she was a college student, and then I still work with her today, just hiring her for her design work. I have done trades, and I have done, really any combination of things that are helpful to myself and to the designer. But I think it's really important for designers to get credited for their work. So on the back of all of our cards, if a designer will give me their maker's mark, then I'll make sure to include them so that they get credit for that work. I think, rising tide raises all ships, and it's one of the, I may not have a lot of cash on hand most of the time, but I like being able to share that.
I think that's really lovely. It's a really nice way to, like you said, yeah, we all raise together.
Yeah.
And there actually was a question I wanted to ask earlier. Someone wanted to know about like custom work. Can people reach out to you if they have some custom work that they need done?
Thank you. Yes. The best way to do that is just via email, either Allison at Igloo Letterpress or info@Igloo Letterpress. And I will also say that, you know, in our before times, but also hopefully again in the future, like I am happy for people to come in and print with me. So I will make sure that everything turns out perfectly and lead people through mixing the ink and actually running their project on press. But you know, those times working with my grandfather and having that, again, that pride in making were really informative to me as a child. And if somebody has something that they want to make, I'm happy to lead them through that process. It is not less expensive to do it yourself at Igloo Letterpress. It's the same price, but in the sense that's discounted because it actually should probably be more expensive because it takes longer and we spend more time when I have people come in for those experiences, but I think it's really important and valuable.
Allison, this was an absolutely amazing Hamilton hang today. Thank you.
Thank you so
John,
much.
yeah. And John, you were a great, oh, I love that ending. You were a great cameraman. And this was lovely. We've been seeing a lot more commercial shops and you're a nice like mix between two. You having kids get used to bookmaking and just to know that that's a normal thing is a really lovely idea. So thank you for everything that you shared today.
You bet. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I will say thank you to everyone who joined. Yes, we're going to clap because that was lovely. And thank you to everyone who joined us on the call. One of the ways that we can continue to do these free events every week is by our membership. So I know a lot of you on the call are already members. If you are not, I want to say please consider it. It's how we keep heat in the building, open our doors, and do events like this.